Hello here and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. We're working our way through week 3 of fall camp. Lots of storylines here this week. Scrimmage guys will be on Saturday. That is the final. You get 2 of them. You basically get, the way it works, you get 2 big spring scrimmages and 2 big August scrimmages. And those are honestly the 4 biggest practices of the year. Nebraska will have their final one before they flip the page and get into game preparation. So as we set the stage, let's go through some of the key questions and things. Like, first of all, I want to hit on this. Xavier Betts, as we know, has left the program. Lots of questions at this wide receiver position without Xavier Betts. And, you know, is he replaceable? Is the big plays that he could have maybe given this offense, do they have that in there? I think that's one of my big questions right now.
Well, one of the big play guys, Marcus Washington, is hurt. You know, I would say they need him back pretty quick. Marcus Washington was Nebraska's second leading receiver last year. He's not the downfield threat that Trey Palmer is. He's not probably the downfield threat that Xavier Betts is, but he's a downfield threat, and you need him. He's a good
Billy
red zone
Kemp
player.
be a downfield threat?
I think he can be. A lot of the, who are their downfield threats at receiver? I don't know. You hope the tight ends factor into that discussion. Thomas Bedoni and Eric Gilbert and Borkacher. But it's the receiver group and the O-line are what we need to, or what fans probably need to be watching close. I mean, do they have enough firepower at those spots?
Yeah, and the receiver conversation changed in the sense that I think all of us had projected Betts to be one of the top 3. And so you're talking about a starter or key piece to that rotation now out of the mix, and no one is going to be able to replicate his size and athleticism. That's the biggest concern. You have guys like Isaiah Garcia-Castanet has played a lot of football. Josh Fleeks has played a lot of football, but they ain't Betts, you know? Like they're not that big, strong perimeter guy that can go win a 50-50 ball on the sideline. So the question becomes, who else in that room is going to step up? Is it going to be one of those freshman wide receivers? We've heard Malachi Coleman's name mentioned a bunch. We've heard Jaden Doss, Jalen Lloyd. But then Matt Rule kind of tempered that earlier this week, where he's like, I don't know if we need any of them to play at this point. So then that opens up the conversation. Do you turn to the walk-ons, the Ty Hahn or Alex Bullock?
They're reliable, I think.
Who have been getting nothing but praise all fall camp. And I know that's the last thing some fans, especially on our site, want to hear, is that walk-on wide receivers are going to crack
these guys had
top
D1
rotation.
offers in high school.
I know, but it's a conversation that Nebraska fans, I don't know, some of them just don't like it. They don't like it when heralded recruits are beat out by walk-ons.
Because they know that's not how you're going to beat Michigan.
Exactly. So
Probably not.
It's a question that there's no answer right now. I don't think the staff has an answer, and I don't think we will get an answer until we see how all of these new faces respond when it's for real under the lights.
Well, the thing with Xavier Betts, I mean, he had the ability to change games. He did it twice in his career. The Penn State game was probably maybe Scott Frost's best win he had. Debate me if he had a better win than beating Penn State, because I don't know what it would be. But he had the play that broke that game open, a little flip pass for 41 or 45 yards. Mm-hmm. That was the longest pass play of that season for Nebraska. That was they didn't have much. Then the next year, he had an 85-yard run against Northwestern. That's a defense that doesn't give up 85-yard plays under Pat Fitzgerald. And that was the longest run at Nebraska since 2012. I mean, how many other guys on this roster could take a football 85 yards in a Big Ten football game?
Right. Now, Robin,
not a lot.
Yeah, Robin, you mentioned the word reliable. Reliable is nice, but you want more than reliable. Mm-hmm. You want
big guys that are win you games.
Yeah, like Trey Palmer. I mean, let's face it. We're looking at a receiver core. If you look at it, they lost Trey Palmer, who's going to make the Tampa Bay Bucs roster.
Especially after the injuries they've been having there.
What's that?
Especially after the injuries.
Yeah, they'll carry 6. And he's going to make it.
He's going to make
a foregone conclusion. And now Betts. Those are not just reliable guys. Those are guys who change games or are capable. Now, some people are going to say, "Oh, easy on Betts changing games." Well, Sean just laid out a couple plays.
Those are 2 more examples than pretty much anybody else has done.
Right. And if he's right, like, if he was all in and he was healthy, in every way possible. Yeah, he was going to be a game changer. So I don't know how many. I just don't know. Is Billy Kemp a game changer? He's not super fast. He's reliable, and he'll be targeted a lot. But is he is he going to beat a corner one-on-one on a go route?
Or is he an underneath guy?
Yeah. More of an
is he a guy that is just really good at sitting in the zone and catching the ball, getting situational plays?
Right.
And guys, situational plays win you games.
They do.
And Nebraska hasn't been good in situational plays.
Yeah, no doubt.
They've been good at throwing deep balls to Trey Palmer, but they weren't a great situational.
All last year was home runs. They weren't getting any singles, So, that's where I think Kemp's addition comes in more than anything. It's just that consistency from down to down to be able to move the sticks, keep drives on. And he has that potential, I'm sure, but not to the level of the guys that Nebraska has now lost from last season.
What I'm saying about I like Kemp. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I'd like Kemp if he was with Palmer and Betts.
Yeah, no doubt.
If he's not your one guy, that's what it comes down to.
He's your lone known commodity.
He's got almost 200 career catches, which would be one of the top numbers in program history.
That's
in Nebraska.
Good. But what I'm suggesting is he's not going to be the number one receiver on many good teams. He's not going to be number one. He'd be 2 or 3.
And let's shift focus to Arik Gilbert because the waiver, I think that's becoming a story. I know when we talked to Matt Rulesip in Texas in June, it didn't seem like there was much worry. That the waiver was in, it's a process. This will happen. Here we are midway through fall camp. We've seen the NCAA deny a few waivers out there. And then you saw Matt Rule kind of go all in.
Oh, God, he went all in.
And he marked his spot on this thing that if he doesn't get this waiver, the NCAA shouldn't give these waivers out ever again.
Yeah, he said they shouldn't even have a waiver process if if Arik Gilbert doesn't get it. It's probably on his mind a lot. It should be on his mind. Listen, I've had some criticism because I've been saying if Gilbert and Fedoni are healthy, that's worth a lot, and maybe a win or a win and a half. And people are like, okay,
it's 2 pros.
Gilbert hasn't caught a ball in 2 years, and Fedoni's never caught a ball in college. Well, what I would say to that is it's not like these guys just rose up out of Salt Creek and said, okay, I got to figure out how to exist in society. They've played football. They know the game, and I think they can be big time difference makers.
You could argue that those two have the highest ceilings of anyone on that offense and maybe anyone on the team.
Right.
You look at with the NFL scouts come to practice, who are they watching? They're watching those tight ends. And so that's where the Gilbert situation is so important and such a critical part right now, because if they have him, that answers a lot to the receiver question. Sean hit on how the tight ends are going to get more involved. When you got 2 dudes like that, that's like Gronk and Aaron Hernandez back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like
if they're playing at the level that they're capable.
Travis Vokalek and Austin Allen had really good tight end careers at Nebraska. The ceilings of these 2 players are much higher if they can get where they can go. And
that's the question.
I think an educated Husker fan understands that. You don't just get a 5-star tight end and then the number 1 ranked tight end as well. Thomas Fedoni was a high 4-star out of nowhere. Those are legit recruits.
Yeah. And so the concern for me is a lot of it with Rule's tone on that last time he addressed it publicly. He seemed like a guy that was kind of, I won't say panicking, but like starting to worry a little bit about the likelihood of that getting approved. And people asked today, or in this week's RSS chat, if it could go on to the season. Yes. There is no set deadline.
It could be like Noah Vedral 2018.
Yeah. The NCAA works at whatever pace it wants. They can approve a waiver in 48 hours and they can approve one in 4 months.
But if you have full cooperation, it helps. Like Nebraska with Jess Shepard in women's basketball, they fully cooperated to help her get a waiver at Notre Dame. And then she won a national championship at Notre Dame because she needed the change of scenery, and Nebraska supported her. It was tough, but they did. Wherever, is it Georgia? Is it LSU? What is the holdup on this waiver?
Is it necessarily one of those schools? Could it be something else?
A cooperating party. I took that as another school.
Yeah, that's usually what it is. I remember when Isaac Copeland was getting a waiver, and this is before the immediate eligibility, Georgetown was really dragging its feet. And so that's why he ended up being a mid-year enrollee, and there was questions about when he'd be eligible. It's a lot of it because Nebraska was having a hard time getting Georgetown to cooperate. And so I'm sure this is a very similar situation where whether it's Georgia or LSU, that could be part of why this thing is being delayed. I don't think it's a matter where there's a waiver sitting on somebody's desk and they just haven't gotten to it.
No.
I think that there's a lot of pieces involved here, and if one part of that is dragging its feet, that's when you get a delay like we've seen.
But that's why I don't want to just say it's either Georgia or LSU, because it could be there's a variety of people involved. There could be a counselor somewhere. It could be.
I don't know though. I think it's a team.
Parent. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's a team. Go back to Noah Vedral. I mean, he transferred from UCF to Nebraska and needed the waiver, and it made perfect sense. He's a legacy. He's from Nebraska. He followed Scott Frost. UCF followed him but UCF drugged their feet and waited until 4 games into the season before they signed Noah Vedral's waiver. And then they put him on a plane Friday to go to Evanston, and then they had to send Matt Masker home.
That's right.
Poor Matt Masker.
And that Noah Vedral decision might have cost Nebraska. Like, they could have maybe beaten Colorado when Adrian Martinez got hurt. They maybe could have beaten Troy. You never know. I mean, that was a big deal at that time.
That was Andrew Bunch, right?
Yes. Which, I mean, if you're being honest, you could argue that's like one of the least gifted overall players to start quarterback at Nebraska in history. And they had to start him in games. I mean, he's a good So are you going to debate me? I mean, you could make a case that Ron Kellogg or
like Bo Davis.
I don't know. I mean,
Bo Davis had power.
I'm not
going
to debate you over who's the worst quarterback to ever play for.
But like, they had to start a little known Matt Turman, I guess would be but like a little. I mean, they had because of
very uncomfortable debate. Who's the worst quarterback?
Well, like the least heralded guy that they've had to trot out there. That's I mean, like, this is Nebraska. You don't have to trot out like an unknown walk-on quarterback very often.
No,
you shouldn't have to.
So you really shouldn't have to.
All right. With that said, when we come back, we're going to carry over to offensive storylines. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And welcome back here to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. We're going to talk offensive storylines. Before I get to that, this segment of the Husker Online Show is brought to you by Homefield. Homefield is a premium collegiate apparel brand. It's based in Indianapolis. They emphasize their commitment to creativity, incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel, and vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 schools to choose from, including, of course, Nebraska. Homefield designs are super unique because they delve into the archives and the history of each school, using unique logos, mascots, iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. They are all about authenticity and nostalgia. Just go on there, take a look. They have, if you're tired of getting the same old Nebraska gear every year because it kind of hasn't changed up much, check out Homefield. They're going to get you outfitted for the start of the season. Our Husker Online listeners will get 15% off. Just simply use the code Huskers23. That's Huskers23 to get 15% off. Visit homefieldapparel.com. Use code Huskers23 to get that discount. All right, guys, let's talk offensive storylines here now. As we look ahead into fall camp, I want to hit on quarterbacks briefly because obviously we know Jeff Sims is the guy, but Matt Rule did say he's very comfortable with both backups. I did find it interesting. We did catch some pictures and video of Heinrich Harburg catching passes this week. What did you guys make of that?
Gadget guy. I mean, I like that. He's a great athlete. I think they got to find ways to use him. And if it's quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, fullback, whatever it may be, find ways to get them on the field. Get your best athletes on the field. So we'll see if they actually use it, but it's intriguing.
Where'd that video come from?
I think Channel 3 got it.
Oh boy, yeah, that's come from Nebraska.
We have a picture.
Oh really?
I mean, it was in the open period.
Yeah,
like there was a picture of him catching a pass.
Yeah, I think I would not have him catching passes if I were the coach with the media there.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't. I mean, you could surprise
it's something for PJ to think about. How about that?
Yeah, well, that's a good way to put it.
There you go. Matt Rule is a calculated dude.
Look at that Haas, though. I mean, look at the size of this kid.
Yeah, he's a beast. He is a beast.
I mean, that is Planet Fitness Steve Sipple.
He could carry the boats.
That's kettlebell Sipple right there.
That's just full-fledged,
like 1985. All right. The other part of this, the other part of this conversation is Chubba Purdy, who according to Rule has made massive improvement. Massive. Okay, what's that look like?
I don't know.
Well, massive improvement look
like? I guess compare it to what Matt Rule has seen in person, which is very limited action in the spring. So inherently, you would hope that he's making a much bigger impression in the fall now healthy with a full summer of conditioning under him. But it's certainly notable because I think there was a point where Chuba was kind of the odd man out in that 3 QB discussion. Now it seems like he's the front runner to be the number 2, especially with them tinkering around with different ways to use Harburg. That leads me to believe that Chuba, as of taping time, is the guy as the number 2 quarterback.
I agree. I agree. If you have a quarterback catching passes in practice, let's put it this way: if I'm Chubb, I feel pretty good that I'm not catching passes in practice.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
Now, what I've always said about this, and say whatever you want, I've never been a huge fan of that sort of thing because all it does is take away reps at quarterback where he's got to get better. So I don't know, but I'm not criticizing that. I'm not necessarily being critical in this case because I don't know how often it's happened.
Yeah, the clip was from one individual,
right?
Over the course of the entire fall camp that we saw. So who knows?
Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of quarterbacks playing other positions.
And again, I would not put it past Rule that if that was like just some, hey PJ, check this out.
It worked for Luke McCaffrey.
It worked really well for McCaffrey.
What's really funny about Luke McCaffrey is now he's like regarded as like a legit NFL draft pick receiver.
Right.
But God, around here, when those suggested, it was like, people, they weren't on board. So that whole thing, I mean,
we don't need to relitigate that situation.
It was a mess when you go back to that. But running back wise, I'm intrigued by this room too, guys, because Gabe Urban, I think, gets the first carry at Minnesota. But I think we know what Anthony Grant can do. I think he's limited on a few things that they need, as far as pass protection or plays or whatever those things are.
Yep.
But Ramir Johnson's coming. He had a great scrimmage, had a long touchdown run. Emmett Johnson is coming. How about the Johnson & Johnson boys back there?
Yeah, I think it's become clear. I mean, it's really become clear that Anthony Grant, it's not about his ability to carry the ball. We all know he can do that. It's probably pass protection more than anything. I thought it was illuminating what Rule said Tuesday, about that he's been taking more snaps with the ones now. So there's competition there.
Well, I think another layer to that is that not only is Anthony playing well on the field, he's doing the right things off the field. I mean, keep in mind, he was suspended in March because he, kind of the same deal where he wasn't doing anything bad, but he needed to focus on his academics and other things, according to Rule. And so Rule, when he talked about Anthony Grant, he's being where he's supposed to be. He's showing up on time. He's doing the things that you're supposed to be doing at this level of football. So I think that if that part of it clicks, I mean, his role is only going to continue to flourish. And you see that now with him getting more reps with the ones. To have a 2-headed monster, I think, is critical. And then you supplement that with Ramir or Emmett, whoever it may be. You can make a strong case that maybe after the potential of tight end, the potential of that running back room is as high as any on the offense.
Yeah.
You're listening here to the Husker Online show as we talk fall camp offensive storylines here to watch. I want to hit on a receiver because I do think Alex Bullock and Ty Hahn are getting their stock, their positions getting bigger by the day. I mean, guys, I wouldn't be surprised if Alex Bullock's put on scholarship at the semester. I mean, if they have an available one to give because of Xavier Betts and Miles Farmer, I mean, the praise that this kid has gotten from Creighton Prep. I mean, Thomas Fedoni went as far as saying that he's one of the best route runners and receivers they have on the team.
No, he said he's one of the best route runner receivers he's ever seen. He said he's one of the best I've ever seen.
As you would say, hello.
Yeah, as I would say, were you there for the Ohio State?
I was going to say, did you watch Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Jackson Smith the Jigba taking like
a heard that Olave? But Sean, I think you're right. He's a guy that probably should be on scholarship. Actually, Bullock is going to play a lot. Hahn's probably going to play. That's not recent. That's not really a recent development either. If you go back to spring, they talked a lot. Rule and his staff talked a lot about Alex Bullock, a little less about Hahn. But yeah, those guys are very prominent right now.
Yeah. And again, I know that there's certain fans that don't like to hear it, but if you got a guy that earns it, play him, especially if he's a veteran guy that you can trust. I mean, you need guys like that. He might not be the game-changing Trey Palmer type player, but he can move the sticks and be an invaluable part of that receiver rotation.
Now, let's get on the offensive line because I do want to hit on that as we wrap up offensive storylines. Teddy Prohaska, you get the impression he could come back sooner rather than later, but is he going to be ready to go? I mean, that's the question. because the last thing you want is him out there not ready in a game like this against Minnesota. And I'll use the example of 2021. Turner Corcoran was battling his injury, and they started Brant Banks. It didn't go well, and then they put an injured Turner Corcoran in that game.
What game was that?
The opener, 2021 opener.
Okay, the opener.
And Corcoran didn't. It wasn't a great.
Oh, against Illinois.
It wasn't a great start for either.
Yeah,
and
against Illinois.
Corcoran, I felt like, has never really recovered from that.
Totally agree.
It just, I think that injury in the beginning of 2021, he hasn't been the same player.
Totally agree. Then they went to Oklahoma. He wasn't ready for that. They went to Oklahoma in 2021, if I'm
right.
Yeah, and I don't think he was ready for that at all. So yeah,
Nico Benito or whatever that guy's name was.
Yeah, Nick Benito. Now listen, Corcoran's the left tackle if they're playing today.
Yeah, he's been the number one left tackle all off.
And Rule said that more.
And interestingly, too, Gunnar Gatula, the true freshman, number 2. So Gatula, that's a feather in his cap for sure, and it tells you that he's got a future here. If he's already, granted, he'd probably be 3 with Prohaska, but he's already in position to play. That's pretty good.
I thought it was notable too that Matt Rule said with Teddy, they're not going to bring him back a day too early.
Right.
They're going to bring him back a day too late, if anything. So they are being overly cautious, and they should be. I mean, this is a guy that has back-to-back significant season-ending injuries. They got to make sure he's right and avoid yet another setback. And I think they did the same thing with Thomas Fidoni, where he was chomping at the bit to get on the field, and they wouldn't let him because you know what? We're not going to put you out there until you are 100% cleared. Right. We don't want to deal with this again.
Remember last August when we saw him running the steps and doing lateral drills, and you thought, it looks like he's ready right now. That was last August.
And he was adamantly telling everyone he was ready right then.
Right.
But they have a schedule, and they stuck to it. And I imagine to do the same thing with Teddy.
All right, we come back. We're going to shift the conversation over to defensive storylines. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, working our way here through this third week of fall camp. Huskers will scrimmage on Saturday, their final scrimmage of fall camp. I'll tell you guys, the defense, though, this unit's coming together, man. I've talked to some people that were at practice. I think there's a lot of optimism about this unit, the scheme of Tony White. A lot of shifting, a lot of stunting, a lot of free rushers coming in. I mean, I just think there's a lot of elements to this that intrigue me for an opener because Minnesota won't have as much to prepare. Yes, they can look at Syracuse film, but it's not going to be the same exact defense that they ran. There's going to be twists to it that fit Nebraska's personnel. And I think there's enough veterans in this defense as well that have made the transition sit pretty easy.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, Matt Rule said the word dominated. The defense dominated the scrimmage on the last scrimmage on Saturday. Now he went back on that a little bit, but I'm going to go with what he said initially. He said the defense dominated. Now sometimes you guys have covered this a long time. Coaches come off the field, they're hot. A lot in football, there's a lot going on. That quick assessment can be a little inaccurate sometimes. Especially after you watch the film, but it's a good sign. I think it's a good sign that his first impression was they dominated. The other thing I'd say is, Sean, I go back and forth on that conversation of can that 3-3-5 surprise Minnesota? Yeah, I think it can. I as I said, I go back and forth. Right now, I'm kind of on I think they can do some things that could get Minnesota kind of discombobulated early and have an impact on the game.
I think so much of that is the versatility of their personnel, where you have guys that can play with their hand in the dirt. They can drop back into coverage. You have safeties that can, drop back, and you have other ones that can, play in the box against the run, a stout run defenders. So I think having those interchangeable parts is kind of the hallmark of that defense. They seem to have a lot of them at all three levels.
Yeah, they do.
And so that I think helps in a significant way. The other part, though, I really liked about what Tony White said when talking about his defense is, yes, they do all these different things. They're always moving. They're always, changing things up, but they're not going to overwhelm their players. If they see a guy can't handle something, they're going to scale it back, and they're going to play to that player's strengths so that they can actually just go play football, and not be caught overthinking everything to where you're taking yourself out of plays before the ball's even snapped.
There's a few X factors that we don't know. I number one, I'll say this. I think Nick Henrich is back, and I think he's had a good camp. And people have known that, wow, he looks faster and better than he has before. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's a black shirt and he's starting. And I think people forget Nick was a captain. He's the only
Last year.
returning captain on this roster.
Mm.
But, because he was hurt for the spring and hurt, you didn't necessarily look at him as a captain in the spring, but you can just on the show they do, you can see his leadership. He's a leader. Him and Luke Reimer are leaders of this defense. MJ Sherman. I mean, I like the look of that linebacker group. The question now is the defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Can they get enough depth there? We know who that starting three at least appears to be: Blaze Gunnerson, Nash Hutmacher, and Ty Robinson. What is that second group? Elijah Judy's in there. You know that. Ruquan Buckley probably in there. Kai Whalen probably in there.
Got the guys.
And then the freshmen. I mean, Cam Lenhart, I think, is a factor. Princewell Yellen, we don't know where he's at. He was hurt. But you heard Matt Rule guys make the comment. This is a grown man's football game we're going to play on 8/31. He keeps saying that, by the way. 8/31.
They always say that. Those kids are saying that too. They listen to Rule. They always refer to as 8/31. The name we haven't been hearing, and I don't know if it's just because nobody asked, is Elijah Judy. Judy's got to be big in this. It's a little surprising to me we don't mention him as a starter. I just don't. On the other hand, I don't know exactly what White's looking for from those positions up front. But Judy's got to be. I got to think he's a critical piece to this. We just haven't heard much about him this month.
And who knows why that is. A lot of times it's just because coaches don't get asked about him. Like it's very few times that they just unprompted bring a guy up. And so maybe he's doing everything that they expect. And so he just kind of gets, forgotten about compared to surprises and your other known commodities.
And if they do bring up a guy unprompted, hello headlines.
Notable. Absolutely.
I mean, they brought up Fields. They brought up Fields unprompted. Mm-hmm. We jumped all over that.
Yeah.
Is he the number 2 rover?
Is he number 2?
No, that's my question to you.
I don't know.
Like who is the rover after Isaac?
What about Javin Wright?
No.
Javin Wright's a linebacker.
Yeah, he's working linebackers.
Right, moved to linebacker. He's not secondary anymore.
Yeah, Sean. My thing. I hate it when we ask questions we don't know.
No, but I'm just like, could he be? Could he be the number 2 rover?
I don't even know who the number 1 rover is.
Gifford.
Is it Gifford for sure, or is he playing straight safety?
Well, I think Singleton. And then once again, is Hartstog a corner or Hill a corner?
I thought they characterized Gifford as a safety. That he's playing,
but the rover is a safety.
Yeah,
there's 3 safeties, man.
Right. Yeah.
Let's not overthink this.
Yeah.
We can
overthink it with the best of them. It's hard though. You were saying today, Sean, it's hard to pinpoint some of these positions
because they won't say who's playing where. Like
everybody's working everywhere.
Versatility.
Yeah. So I think the key for us is not to get too caught up in that. Who's the rover? I don't know. Could be one of about 7 guys, probably.
I think Matt Rule will put a depth chart out. Though.
By the way, I've heard Hartzog works at rover too. So I don't know who that's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Hartzog, by the way.
I think Rule will be the kind of coach, though. He will put a depth chart out. I mean, remember who was the worst one? Well, Frost wouldn't put him out sometimes. Pelini definitely wouldn't put him out.
Yeah. Did Bo not ever put out a depth chart?
No.
Well, and Frost was kind of weird about it at times too. I mean,
Frost and Bo had a lot of similarities. Frost was much like Bo. He just disguised it much better.
Bo would put like 1 out and it'd have like 50 oars on it. And then they would never change it the rest of the season. Even if a guy was hurt, like
it would be like Keith Mann having to make changes, just like obvious changes.
Yeah, season-ending injury. You just take the guy out of the starting lineup.
Under Solich and even Callahan, like the Monday or Tuesday pressers, both days, like they would legitimately you would feel like the hot off the press depth chart each week, and you'd sit there and study it because they would make legit changes every week on that depth chart.
Yeah,
before the press conference. Remember that?
I wonder what we're going to see on that first game week press conference, if we're going to see a legit depth chart.
It's going to be Friday, right? That's the initial plan. Friday before the Thursday game.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we're going to be Mondays Matt Rule only.
Okay.
And it'll be a Matt Rule for 30 minutes on Mondays at noon.
I don't know.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. There's just a lot of things on that, but they definitely want to play a lot of guys.
17 to 25.
Yes.
That's the number he put on it. Rule.
And on the D line, they said they got 6. They feel good about playing right now. They want 8 or 9.
Yeah, 6 isn't enough.
No, especially with as much as they want to rotate, you better have more than 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of those freshmen are beyond 4-game guys? That I think Cam Lenhart is.
Yeah.
And I think Princewell Yellen is. I believe that.
Yellen.
I got it right, didn't I? Wasn't full-fledged Ramir. By the way,
Oh yeah.
Matt
this.
Rule.
Do this.
Either he listens to our show a lot and Sipple has hypnotized him, or the proper pronunciation is Ramir.
Yeah, there was a video they
what are you
put out
saying?
where
Matt Rule said Ramir in the video.
Ramir has a really good play, and you hear Rule like compliment. He's like, "Great job, Ramir."
I think
someone on our board tagged all of us and said that we owe Sipple an apology. I'll
take
it. I'll wait.
Are you apologizing right now?
No, I'm not. I'm going to hold off until we get actual confirmation.
Would you like to apologize?
Well, what I don't like is like the Jordan ball, the Amir Abdullah.
Amir.
I mean, you've got a couple under your on your belt.
Jordan was
a real slip.
I don't know. Is it spelled? It's Jordyn, right?
That's Jordan.
Jordan.
I got Jordan out of that.
And she goes by Jordy. But
yeah, maybe that's her confusion.
Maybe someday we'll get her on our show and we'll have a good laugh about Jordan Ball. But all right, when we come back, mailbag time. Abby Barmer will join us. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, Abby Barmer joining us now for the mailbag. But before we get to that, Steve Sipple, the mailbag, the segment of the show brought to you by.
Well, it's brought to everybody by Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. It's one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. Think about this. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right, Abby, time for the mailbag. Where are we starting off at today?
Who do you think takes the first running back spot, and does Nebraska's offensive line show enough improvement to have an effective run game?
Well, I think we all agree it's Gabe Urban, but who gets the most carries in that Minnesota game might be the better question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's the hot hand? Because as we talked about, Anthony Grant's coming on over the last few weeks, and still think Urban's the game one starter, but that workload will be fun to evaluate. And then with the offensive line,
yeah,
I mean, I guess we'll see. You know, they should be better. But
you know what the good news
are they going to be good enough to run the ball effectively against Minnesota's defensive line? I don't know.
It's the good news. Good news is a lot of these questions about this team will be answered in game one.
In thorough
really the
fashion.
First 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're playing 2 Power 5s out of the gates. I mean, you're not going to dance around with some FCS team.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing men.
Not played in Idaho. You know, like you're going against your direct competition within your division.
Now, Nebraska could have really benefited from an opportunity to play a game like that to open the year. I mean, you think about what playing a conference game has done in Nebraska the last 3 years in a row.
Yep. It
kind of puts you in this hole that Nebraska can never get out of, going back to the 2020 year when they opened with Ohio State, then Illinois, Northwestern, now Minnesota.
Yeah, offensive line. Ask me at about 11 o'clock on August 31.
When you're on your third dilly bar in the Minnesota press box.
When have I ever done 3? I'm a 1 or 2 at the moment.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
Next question.
Okay. Is Nebraska's special teams unit flying under the radar with Buschini, Kemp as a returner, and other guys in a kicker battle?
I don't know. I mean, Buschini's good, but I think the kicker battle thing, that's the question. I mean, I believe it's going to be Alvano, and he wasn't as bad in the scrimmage, I think, as people made it out to be. I do think Bleak Road struggled, though, from what I've heard. I think Alvano was 5 of 7 is what I was told. Missed a long one. Bleak Road missed several. So I think it's Alvano's job. He's just got to have another strong week here to finish it off.
And Alvano has shown a knack for being able to step up big in clutch moments inside Memorial Stadium even. But he's still going to be a true freshman out there, and with 90,000 people watching him, you know, and so that's a different element that we don't know about. His leg talent is there, but how is he going to handle being thrown out there when he has to make a kick with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter in a 1-score game? Like, you know, that's what we don't know about a true freshman. So Buschini's I think the known commodity. I think Kemp can be a no-brainer there at punt return, but I don't know if that return game, I wouldn't call it game-changing yet. And then beyond Buschini, the kicking game, I think, still needs to be proven.
The question with Kemp will be on punt returns. Okay, he's proven himself at a high level in terms of being reliable.
Yeah.
Catching the ball. I think he said he only had 3 drops in that at Virginia, and that encompassed 103 returns, I think was the number, maybe more than that.
He fielded 140 punts.
Oh, 140. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, he didn't have a big average, though, isn't like 5 yards a return. Can he break a few? That's the question. And then what you hear on Albano from smart people is it's just the ball sounds different coming off his foot. That's key. I mean, he's probably got a more powerful leg, so accuracy's the deal, and I think he's pretty accurate. I think it will be Albano too.
On the returns too, a big part of it is, Bill Callahan used to always say that you got to vice the gunners. Like, can Nebraska hold up those gunners to get a return? I mean,
it's big. Special teams is like a lot of things in football. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts that have to work well for it to be good. One thing we haven't talked about at all because it's been good is the snap and the hold. It hasn't been bad for 3 years. I don't think there's been a botch in 3 years, for sure. 2. Can you remember one?
Mm-mm.
I don't. They've been good there. Will that continue? I mean, that's something Nebraska hasn't had problems with.
Ortiz is a good snapper from all
We'll see on
reports.
that.
And they're playing a lot of starters on special teams and guys that aren't just being put there. They want to be on special teams. I think that makes a big difference.
Oh, huge difference.
Okay, our next question. We talked about this a little bit earlier this week, but which players on Nebraska's current team could play on both sides of the ball?
We kinda talked about this.
Hypothetically.
I think Gabe Irvin could play some linebacker.
Grant. Anthony Grant. I think he could play safety linebacker.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
There's some real obvious.
Nash Hutmacher
Yeah.
could play O-line.
Tommy-
Ty Robinson probably
Tommy
could
Hill.
play.
Tommy.
Tommy Hill. He did
it.
limitedly.
There should be a lot of guys.
Simple, did you write a Tommy Hill receiver column?
Well, I thought maybe they'd go to him a little bit because he was fast and they just needed help anywhere. I mean, the offense was, what was it, 100th in the country. I mean, I just thought they needed something.
That thing
did.
last year was hard to wrap your hands around.
Right. Well, no, it wasn't. It was easy to wrap your hands around. It was bad.
It was nothing.
Right. It wasn't a complex discussion to me. There should be a lot of guys in this discussion. Right?
Hutmacher.
I said, yeah.
You said him. Okay.
A lot of guys.
Yeah.
Buschini.
I mean, don't you think a guy like Alex Bullock could play on defense? Like
Speaking
a
of
safety.
punters, like Sam Foltz could have played safety, receiver, and punter. He could have played all 3 levels.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's how good of an athlete. And Sam Foltz was a whole.
Am I wrong on this? Do you think a lot of players could do this? It's just a question of how good, I mean,
Right. I mean, they could do it. I don't know
how good.
Yeah, what the product would actually look like.
I mean, Alex Bullock could probably play safety. He played safety at a pretty high level.
He played corner in high school.
Corner, high
And he was
school.
good. I mean,
Good corner.
the game I went to at Lincoln Southeast, he had 2 picks and 2 touchdown receptions. I think in the same
corner,
game.
not safety.
And two touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, he was all over.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy you think could do it. I mean, even Kemp is a physical guy. I think he could play maybe a corner. You just don't know how, like a guy like Kemp, how does he turn and run? How's his hips? I don't know.
Like Maurice Washington, they used to say, like, could have stepped in and been like an elite corner.
Really?
Like
Not surprised.
His hips.
He was really fluid. Yeah, really fluid.
And then obviously at running back, he didn't even practice and would just run 80-yard runs. That's why he got a lot of chances.
Yes, he did.
Next question.
Okay. Who are the next breakout offensive and defensive linemen, and who does Nebraska need to be the next breakout ones?
And these are, once again, really hard. But I think Princewell, Cam Lenhart,
Good names.
you got to start there. And then Riley Van Poppel. I think, and Jason Machacek. I mean, I really like his big picture look. Sualafa too. They've got a group of D linemen on
Just
this
all
roster.
young.
But you can't put kids against grown men.
Can't you say Judy?
Yeah, I don't look at him as a young player.
You don't.
He's a junior.
I mean, he's a transfer from Texas A&M that's played at A&M.
Yeah. But couldn't he break out at Nebraska? Couldn't this be his breakout time?
Could be.
Yeah, that's what
It
I
should be nice if it was.
Yeah, I look at him like he could break out.
Is this just defensive line?
Offensive and
How
defensive.
about Gatula?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think Sam.
that's your left tackle in waiting right there.
Looks
I
like
don't
it.
think so.
No?
I think he's only there by default. I mean, I think there's going to be more and more development in guys. I think Sam Sledge is the guy that's going to emerge and be the center after Ben Scott.
Yeah, not left tackle.
I don't know if Gatula is a true Big Ten left tackle yet. I mean, I think he's getting the reps because they don't have anybody. Like he's getting reps by necessity. He was here in the spring. I've seen enough of him. He's got a ways to go to play at this level, but he's got a lot of good reps, which you can't, downgrade. I just think to say he's ready to be the left tackle like a year from now, that's a huge jump.
They've slipped Justin Jenkins into the conversation a couple times. And they say what you always hear about Justin Jenkins is he's just tougher than hell.
New Jersey kid.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. I mean, he has that look. He looks tough. There's some names.
Final question.
Okay. Nebraska's season opener against Minnesota is coming up at the end of the month. What is your most memorable season opener?
I would say the 03 Oklahoma State Nebraska game for me.
Good one.
And it was big in a lot of senses because it was Frank Solich kind of rebooted his staff, 6 new assistant coaches, Bo Pelini. It was an opener. It was a ranked team. The previous summer, I was interning at ESPN, and I can remember when I was there, Bill Byrne actually walked through the room I was in, and he was negotiating that game to get moved to start the season.
You are kidding.
And he was there to talk with ESPN.
You are kidding.
And they moved the game up.
You've never told me that story.
And so I was sitting there, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm working here for the summer." And then in the newsroom of ESPN, and he was there, and then they announced it was in May when I was May, June, July, August, and it was sometime in May. Then they moved that game to open the year. But Mike Gundy was the offensive coordinator, Les Miles the head coach, and we interviewed the coaches before the game at the walkthroughs. Like Frank would do 5 minutes on Friday, not Thursday, Friday, and then Les Miles and Gundy were available. And I remember I interviewed Mike Gundy for 1620 back then, and he was just like, "We have no idea what the hell we're going to see." He goes, "We've been watching film, but we're just guessing. Like, we don't know."
That's really uncomfortable.
And then you watch that game, and they had no idea. Like, Bo Pelini came out with a completely different scheme than I believe it was Fields. It was the quarterback of Oklahoma. Josh Fields, maybe, former baseball player. And then they had Rashawn Woods. Rashawn Woods had his lowest game, really, of his career. It was like 15. His lowest output in like 15 straight games against Nebraska, 46 yards.
Damn, interesting.
So that's mine.
Go for it.
Oh, I mean, mine in terms of impact lately is Illinois in 2021. It was an amazing day, just in terms of impact. It was a what show. That's what it was, and it had a huge impact on the way I looked at everything about the program, Frost program. Frost coming out and saying we weren't ready for that, the look they showed us on defense. Oh, really? They showed you something really different? I mean, that was bizarre almost.
The movie line, too, was big.
Oh, and the other thing I remember is how pissed those players, the Nebraska players, were after the game. It was hard to interview them. They were so angry. Mm-hmm. And I seldom have I felt that from a Nebraska player, that it was they were super angry. So it was not good. And I just remember it. There was a lot about the day I remember. I remember watching Illinois warming up and saying to Chris Basnet, Nebraska's going to have trouble with this. That Illinois, they weren't bad. They weren't bad that year. They were a big, strong team up front. And I thought, this looks very dangerous to me. I didn't like Nebraska's chances at all when I was watching warm-ups. So I just remember the impact.
Yeah.
The impact.
Last year, it's hard to beat going to Dublin and then having a coach essentially be fired after one game. Like, you knew it was done at that point. And so that one is up there. From a positive standpoint, though, you got to go to the Kickoff Classic in '94 when, coming off that brutal national championship loss, Nebraska goes to East Rutherford, New Jersey, to Giants Stadium, just totally dominates West Virginia. Top 25 West Virginia team, by the way, 31-0. Frazier just went off, and that was like, here we go.
Flex.
The run begins.
Huge flex.
Yeah. My dad went to that game.
Yeah.
Did you, what?
With my dad and his uncles, his brothers, and friends, they would go to like the Orange Bowls, the Fiesta. They would go in the kickoff. I mean, that was a lot. I mean, if I remember right, a lot of Nebraskans went to New York City. I mean, it was, turn the Nebraskans loose in Times Square, like it was quite the.
I watched that game back in Lincoln with Haas. I wasn't covering the team at that time. Not full time.
You were on the bowling beat back then.
I was on the. I think I was.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. I wrote a Sunday bowling column every Sunday.
I covered cross country, rifle. I mean, we did it all back in the early days.
Covering cross country is interesting.
Ball, softball, volleyball. I mean, we've all put our time in.
Oh yeah.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk AP top 25 poll out, and also the volleyball polls out. We'll give our thoughts on that next. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, and Abby Barmore talking polls as we had a big week here with both not only the AP Top 25 in college football being released, but also the preseason volleyball poll out. Let's first, guys, weigh in on this football poll released. Not a lot of surprises. Georgia, number 1, Michigan, Ohio State, 2, 3. Alabama 4. It's funny, Alabama 4, that's low for them. I mean, they haven't been, generally they're in that 1, 2, or 3 spot more often than not, but Penn State at 7. How about this, though? The new Big Ten teams, USC 6, Washington 10, Oregon 15. I mean, the Big Ten, it's a man's league. Wisconsin 19, Iowa 25.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Big Ten presence, especially towards the top, when you have 2 of the top 3, I guess for now 3 of the top 10 of the polls. I mean, that just shows the strength of the league. But really, Wisconsin 19. I mean, we've talked about this before. I'm still in wait and see mode with them. I guess I just don't understand why they're getting so much hype to where they're picked to win the division. They're a top 20 preseason team, despite all the changes that's going on up there. That, I don't know. Maybe I'll be proven dead wrong here in a few weeks, but for now, I have my doubts.
Yeah, I think Sean and I both like Iowa to win that division.
I do too. That's who my pick would be.
Interesting. All 3 of us pick Iowa.
I just think they have an established system.
And their
a
schedule
defense
is like one of the easiest in the country.
Yeah, their crossover big game is Penn State, where Wisconsin has to play Ohio State. And, Iowa can beat Penn State. They have.
Mm-hmm. This stat is interesting from Brett McMurphy. 17, check this out. 17 of the last 19 AP preseason number 1 ranked teams failed to win the national title. 17 of the last 19. The only ones that won it when they were preseason number 1 were Alabama in 2017 and USC in 2004.
Wow.
Georgia also trying to become the first 3-peat national champion since
Oklahoma.
Buzz. Rob.
Why don't I know this? I give up.
Minnesota,
Oh.
1934 to 1936.
And that was before
Should've
they
known.
truly had they didn't have an extravagant postseason. And I mean, it was a little bit more controversial who the number 1 team was because.
Oh, those teams were loaded, Minnesota. I don't remember.
But how about this? 11 of the top 15 teams in this poll are from the new SEC and the new Big Ten. 11 of the top 15.
Says everything you need to know.
Yeah, the only one that jumps out to me is USC looks overranked at 6. They
got the Heisman winner back.
Yeah, they have a bad defense too. Well, I mean, they didn't play very good defense last year. They're not very strong up front. They don't strike me as a top 6 team that way.
So you start
Tulane would agree with me. I think.
So you start to look at future realignment. You got Clemson and Florida State in the top 10. You've got Notre Dame at 13. Utah's the only Big 12 team that's in the future Big 12 team.
Future.
I'm talking about the future of college football.
Utah, yes.
They're the only Big 12 team in the top 15. So it is interesting when you kind of slice and dice we know it's SEC Big 10, but this really shows it more with 11 of the top 15.
Yeah, it does. That's where the power is.
All right, Abby, volleyball poll came out. Huskers come in at 5. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Nebraska is one of the 4 Big Ten teams that are in the top 10, and there are 6 Big Ten teams in the top 25. So, of course, Big Ten volleyball is also pretty dominant, just like football. But our top 5 is Texas, Wisconsin, Stanford, Louisville, and then Nebraska. And I think this is a very fair ranking for them. I mean, they have a young team, a lot of unestablished positions. Their setter position, we still haven't figured out what's going on there yet. So, and then also when you look at these teams that are ranked above them, I mean, they have pretty much dominated Nebraska in the last few years. I mean, they haven't beat any of these teams in the last couple of seasons. So Texas is the returning national champion. And I think this is going to be really test Nebraska. They play 8 ranked teams, and they play Stanford and Kentucky in the first few weeks. So we're really going to see what they can do. But Nebraska coming in at 5 here.
Creighton not ranked, right?
Yeah, Creighton's ranked.
Oh, ranked.
I think they're 19.
19, okay. And Marquette's 12. So, and they'll see Creighton again, and they've always kind of had their number. Oh, hey, Creighton's at 18. There you are.
Creighton's at 18, yeah. Nebraska normally does a very good job against Creighton, but they're a really good, tough team. And the last couple of years they've gone 5, and last year really went down to the wire.
All right. Well, lots to keep up on. Scrimmage Saturday. We'll have full coverage on Husker Online. If you're not a follower, subscriber, check us out. Join on HuskerOnline.com. Also like and follow us here on the corner of our YouTube page. Find us anywhere you can find podcasts.